Hi, I'm Wanda Lloyd. Welcome to Two Old Chicks Who Know a Lot of Shit, episode 8. I'm here with my podcast co-host, Tina McElroy Ansa. Hey, Tina.
Hey, Wanda. How we doing today?
I'm doing pretty
How we
good.
doing today?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. We're
Pretty good. What's going on?
I got my third shot, so I'm feeling really good about that.
Yay. I'm working on
Yeah.
it.
Okay. I'm sure you are. Let's get going then. Hey Tina, guess what? It's getting close. It's September. We've been talking a little bit from
I
time to time in the
know.
podcast about getting close to Shelby getting married.
The event of the season.
Girl.
It is it's the event of our season, huh?
Mother of the bride. So as
Uh,
you know, I know, right?
Mother of the bride. Here we are having a great
Mhm.
time being Mother of the bride. You're doing
That's
all the work.
right. Yeah. Well, not all of it, but enough. It's exciting.
You're doing a good job. Good
Thank
job.
you. Thank you. I'm having fun too.
I
So,
know.
as most of you know, Tina and I have been friends for 54 years when we were freshman year roommates at Spelman College. And we want to thank everyone for joining us again as we share our stories and some of our wisdom. But first, it's time for us to check in our regular segment where Tina shares a little bit of something from what's on one of her post-its and I share from my Google Calendar. So, let's get started, Tina. You go first.
Okay. We have to go first. The note this time here it is, and it's a little wet because I've had it for a long time, and the print has run just a little bit, but it's been going on for a while. And mine is a reminder. It's a reminder to get in touch with my longtime friend and sister writer, Janice Ray, who also lives in South Georgia, like myself. She is what I call a good white girl. And I would say that to her face, and she would be very proud of that because she works on being a good white girl. She works on being an ally. And we were talking recently about on a podcast that she was going to do, and she invited me onto this podcast. And the name of the podcast is Janice is the author. Her first book was The Ecology of a Cracker Childhood. She grew up on a junkyard, her father on a junkyard, and then seeing things rust and decay and not be used and go into the earth. She became an ecologist from that. So she's written a number of books about ecology, about Georgia, about the wild. So her podcast is called the Wild Spectacular. And so when I'm talking to Janice, I know that her viewpoint is always from the outside, from the rivers and the streams and the woods outside your house, and a tree that's just in the park or whatever. She finds really joy in that. And so she was interviewing, I think, 5 authors just about themselves and how they feel about their work and all the rest. And one of the questions that she asks of everybody, the podcast, I'll let you know when the podcast goes. It's not ready yet.
Okay.
But the question she asked of all her interviewers, all her guests, was what I thought was a very interesting question. The question was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how wild are you? WILD. How wild are you?
Mm.
And, since it was Janice's podcast, I knew she was talking about, how I go out in the garden and, I walk through the woods and, that kind of thing. I knew she was talking about wild like that. But
You walk in the woods with no shoes on, Tina.
Oh, no, I don't walk in the woods with no shoes on.
No, you walk in the garden with no shoes
I walk
on.
in the garden with no shoes on. Oh, yeah, excuse me. I'm like the other colored folks in the world. Snakes! Oh, man, are you kidding me? No walking in the woods with no shoes on. But Janice probably does that or has done that. But I was thinking about the question because I've asked it of everybody I've talked to since I did the podcast with Janice about a week ago. And it's so interesting because I found it an interesting question. And I found it interesting the way that people react to it or define what wild is. wild is very much a part of we talked last time about our Spelman college days, and there was always a wild girl in the dorm, or what we called a wild girl, who was a lot less inhibited than most of us were. So
but they're not as wild as that. That was tame compared to where we are today, I think.
Oh my goodness, it was totally tame. Yeah. It's not even, it wouldn't even be ordinary now. But but wild it has a lot of connotations, not just being out in the wild in the woods, but also, how free you are, what how far you will go for what you care about. It's just a wonderful question on a scale of 1 to 10. So I guess I'm just asking, I was reminded to call Janice about scheduling, but what I really got from thinking about it is just how wild are you? I think about you, Wanda, and your wisdom. I think from a couple of weeks ago is that I'm 65. I don't care, and I think that as you get older, you get a little wilder too. So
that doesn't sound too wild to me, but I'll take it.
on a scale of 1 to 10, Wanda, how wild are you?
Probably about 3.
2, I was going to say. Okay, what's on? Oh, that's what's on my post-it this time. What's on your calendar, Wanda?
Okay. Well, Tina, you know what? This month, there's hardly any room on my calendar for anything but wedding. So we're gonna get it done. We're gonna talk about it because that's what I'm doing this month. So my daughter Shelby.
Wanda, you see me grinning. I mean, you would think it was my daughter getting married. Oh man, I know every detail, y'all.
I know
about every detail. And if Wanda doesn't give me the deets, I'll call Shelby and get them straight from the bride's mouth.
That's okay. She appreciates that. So she gives me a weekly to-do list. And so, usually early in the week, I'll wake up and there's a text message, do this, which is fine because it helps keep us on track with everything. But we're down to the really, really tiny details like making sure my dress is here. There's a bit of drama about my dress. I'm not going to go into it, but let's just say I'm not sure I have the dress yet. I'm giving her a shower. So we're doing the final details on that and just keeping track of things like getting her hair done and the makeup and the nails, just those little things. All the big stuff has been done. But Tina and Shelby have been teasing me over the course of planning this wedding that when I get my to-do list, I get it all done in one day. And so the last to-do list has
my partner has no concept of what a to-do list is for. A to-do list, Wanda, is not to do it all in one sitting, all in one day. The purpose of it is to check things off. That feeling you get when you check. And Wanda's checking things off like zoom.
I want to check them off today. Whatever today is, that's what I want to do. So her last list was kind of funny because it had seven numbers, do this 7 times. And number 7 was don't do everything today. So I kind of slowed down.
I know who knows you better than your little girl, right?
Yeah. So we have a lot to keep up with, but I think most mothers of the bride, Tina, are probably younger than this old chick. But I'm hanging in there. Oh,
you're doing an excellent job, Wanda. I mean, it's just, I think the reason you're getting these more assignments is that you're doing your assignments. If you would slow down on the assignments, you wouldn't keep. Wanda keeps getting us. I told her, I said, a month ago, aren't we finished now? Haven't we done everything? No, there's more things to be done. I think the more time you have, the more the bride wants to fill that time.
Well, we're getting it done.
But I have to say, Shelby's been a really lovely bride. She really has. She hasn't been a bridezilla at all.
Not at all. But we still have 2 more weeks to go. So right after our next podcast is posted, I'll be a mother-in-law. Tina, I'm gaining a son.
I know, and a really good one too, huh? Yeah. Wanda called me one day after her son-in-law to be was there, and she said, "Oh, Carrie packed the car and got it gassed up, and everything was ready, and I didn't have to do anything." And he asked if Mr. Lloyd was okay, and he and Mr. Lloyd get along okay. And Wanda said, "Ooh, I want a son. You got a son." Yeah, you got a good one. You got a good one.
Yeah.
That really is nice.
So our main segment this time, going a little further. We just talked about the to-do list, the my calendar, but we're going to talk a little bit about relationships. So we call this "Make It Last Forever." Y'all remember the old Keith Sweat song, Tina? You remember that?
I'm dancing to it.
Oh, okay. You're dancing in your head, right? Because I know you're not going to sing it.
Oh, no. We want to keep all the listeners that we have. We don't want to run anybody. We don't want anybody away. Yeah. Well, so we're talking about the wedding, Wanda, and you and I both are firm believers that one should spend more time on the marriage than they do on the wedding. And so we thought that we could come up with a few things that we could maybe get some of, especially of you younger chicks, but maybe of you seasoned chicks as well. We just have a little advice we want to share with you. And Wanda?
Yeah, so Shelby has asked us for wisdom and advice on maintaining a lasting relationship. You're absolutely right. So that's why we're doing Make It Last. And we're going to talk about what we call the 3 S's: sharing, support, and spending time apart. We could have gone on and on and on with our wisdom about this, but we're going to talk about those 3 things.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We plan to do this again, so we don't have to cover all the territory at one time. So Shelby is wise enough, as I said, to really recognize that you and I have both been in long-term marriages, and my babe and Janae and I were together for 46 years actually, and we were married 43 years of those. That's a long time to be with somebody, huh, Wanda?
That's right. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, all relationships and marriages, they just don't last that long.
They don't. I hear people saying, people our age saying, I was married for 12 years, 10 years, 7 years. So we've done good. And Shelby's dad and I have been married for 46 years. So we're in a long-term relationship also. And I'm sure Shelby wants to, of course, emulate that based on what her parents have done. I guess I would say we've been together 46 years, 4 months, 7 days, 5 hours, but who's counting? Okay. I'm just kidding about the hours.
Yeah. Who's counting? I feel the same way. When people ask me, how long we've been together, I always am confused because, we've been married a certain amount of time. But when you really meet that one, I think that you're going to spend your life with. And that's how I felt, when I met Shanae. I thought it a lot because I thought that's ridiculous. You don't know that, from meeting somebody, 4 or 5 times. But, that I did sort of know that. And so I tried to take note from the very first. I knew that this was a different kind of relationship, and so I knew I had to bring certain things to it.
Yeah.
So the second thing that we're going to deal with, the second S, Wanda came up with the S's, was sharing, give and take. It's not always easy.
So that's actually that's the first one. So that's the first S. So I'm going to get started with that. So I was an only child. And I had a lot to learn about sharing. I admit it now. And I still sometimes have a problem with that. When we first got married, I had to get from thinking about my stuff to our stuff. Yeah. Because it had always been my stuff. I never had to compete. I never had to share with anyone. So it was like my furniture. I had to get used to somebody else's underwear being in my dresser drawers because I had furniture.
My closet, my clothes,
everything, my bathroom, my closet, your absolute closet space. But I had never really had to share like that. And it took me a while too. So I guess the wisdom in that is, get to share pretty early. Yeah. Understand that it's really our stuff. As soon as that piece of paper has both your names on it, it's us, it's our.
Yeah. It's officially our stuff. But I agree with you. We should get started maybe a little bit earlier. What's funny is, you're an only child who married someone with siblings, and I'm the youngest with 5 children, and I married an only child. So I saw the sharing from the other side. I'm used to, if you're in the bathroom, I can come in there, I just want to brush my teeth. I just want to wash my face. And, Janae was like, really? And I didn't, I thought this was like such a sort of girly kind of thing. I was surprised that he wanted his own space, and definitely he wanted his own privacy. And that really, really amazed me, because, there were 2 boys and 3 girls, and there was really just no privacy until we got, to be teenagers or whatever. You just walked in on anybody. And I know that sounds strange to an only child. But I had to learn, to respect his parameters and his, because I don't have many parameters. So
wait a minute. Was Janae an only child? Wasn't he an only child too?
That's what I just said. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
Yes. Okay. That's what I was saying. That's the point I was making.
Okay. I thought you were talking about me being an only child.
Oh, no. I was just saying it's interesting that, that we married. Well, when I said you were an only child, I meant you were raised as an only child. Absolutely. So there was a lot. There were a lot of tug of wars. But I'm with Wanda. If you go into it knowing that there's likely going to be a tug of war about space, if you have your certain little things about your space and your drawer and your everything, you might want to start thinking about it beforehand, how you're going to share, and maybe even how to not teach your spouse, something new, but how you can open him or her up to new ways of thinking about things, having our drawer, our chest of drawers instead of my chest of drawers, I think the drawer thing and the closet thing is a hard thing to discuss, because once I move into a house, I think all the closets are mine.
Hey, 46 years later, they're still almost all mine.
Yep, there you go. That's how it is. So yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to the second area.
But wait a minute. I want to also say sharing information is also important.
Like what?
That's very information, like where, what you're going to be doing. People, I was very independent because I was by myself for a while after we got out of college. I was by myself for 4 years. And so if I just wanted to go out of the house, I just go. And I realized that at some point I need to let somebody know where I'm going, or somebody know what I'm going to be doing Tuesday, because somebody else has, we had to plan. Well, I've got something to do Tuesday. What are you doing Tuesday? That kind of thing.
So, it's not just you. It's not just you anymore. That may be the takeaway of that. It's not just you.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so, let's go to our second.
Okay. Our second S is support.
The first one was sharing, right? Yeah. And this is support. Emotional and financial.
So emotional and financial. So I'm going to start with financial. So we never made it a secret to any of our friends about who the breadwinner would be in the family, because it was me. I made more money, and that was okay. But I want to tell a funny story. When I took him home for the first time, I brought him to Savannah, where I live now, and I brought him to my Aunt Catherine, who raised me. She, I just introduced and said, this is someone that I'm dating, and he wanted to meet you. And he is tall. She was kind of short. She sort of looked up at him and said, well, will you be able to? He did say, well, ma'am, she said, what are your intentions? And he said, well, ma'am, I want to marry her. We want to get married. I want her to be my wife. And she said, well, will you be able to take care of Wanda in the style to which she is accustomed? And he said, no, ma'am, I don't think so, because I think she's very smart. She's well educated. She's always going to make more money than me. And she said, you know what? I like an honest man. You have my blessing.
Oh, how sweet.
That's
sweet. Nice.
Yeah. But that became the first conversation that we ever had, my husband and I ever had, really, about money, because he realized early on, even though the gap was not that big at that time, we were very young, we were just getting started, he sort of figured that was going to be the case. And so I feel very good about the fact that I was with someone who was proud of the fact that I had the primary career, and that the money would be coming from what I was doing. He did not have a problem with that at all.
Well, you know,
So
Wanda, that's
mhm,
really interesting because we talked about this before about how you and Willie Lloyd as a couple and me and Jeanette as a couple, how we kind of blended. We were different in different ways, and one of the things that's very interesting about the both of us is that you and I have both always been earn more money than our
the
spouse.
primary, yes.
And I think again, we talk about talking about things. This is definitely something that needs to be talked about up front because you and I just happen to look up on guys who, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have discussed that beforehand. To tell you the truth, if it had not come up brought up by a relative or my daddy brought it up with me, but we were just lucky enough to have men who were not intimidated by that. But I think that's something that you might want to bring up before you say I do, is, not only who's going to be the main breadwinner and can it change back and forth, but also, it looks like I'm going to be the main breadwinner for a while. Are you
Mhm.
okay with that?
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
okay with that? Yeah. Yeah.
And Tina, I think it's a new day. I think that some of the younger folks, the millennials, and some of the ones, they may have a better handle on that because you and I came out of a generation, especially
Mhm.
our parents' generation,
Mhm.
where it was just sort of a given that the man would be the breadwinner. And in some cases, like your mother,
Mhm.
she worked in your family business, but she did not, have a career outside of the family business and the
Mhm.
home. And so
And she
we
wasn't
sort of
given
came from.
credit. And she wasn't given credit for the work that she did.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And my dad had a business, and he made more money. But my aunt was a teacher; she had a career, but she knew that the primary, the money was going to come from that. And that sounds a little strange, and we'll have another conversation about this later because I just said my dad and my aunt, and I always have to explain people that I call my dad and my aunt Catherine, and they were a married couple. It's a long story.
It's a good story. We really do. We
Yeah.
need to have at least one show about different families, blended families. What's
Mhm,
the family
mhm,
now? Yeah.
mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
and also, well, before we move on to the next one, we're talking about sharing the emotional support. It's just
Mhm.
as important as financial. The scientists and the clinicians say that marriages are usually broken up on the rocks of money and then sex and then family or whatever follows that. But I think that the quite often uh, marriages are tested unnecessarily because we have not the people in the marriage have not had the conversation about can I reach out to you when I'm sad or or not. You'll learn that by learning your partner as you go along. But before you
Mhm.
get married, that's not a bad conversation to have. To say you know I need my when I'm angry, I need my space. You
Yeah.
know, how you can support me. Or or when I'm talking to you, you don't have to understand what I'm saying. Just nod your head and I mean, we talked about this before, asking for what you want. But emotional support is very important because we find ourselves going to other places to find that if it's not in our
Right.
relationship. Whether it was in our friends or in our work husbands or people at work or people who've just been kind to us. So the
Mhm.
emotional support, should first come from within the union. I think within the marriage, y'all should be able to support each other emotionally first, and then
Mhm.
you look
Mhm.
for your friends and your coworkers and all the rest. But that's not something that's usually talked about, and especially men aren't going to talk about what they need. So that's
Yeah, and beyond emotional support, it's the support of time. One of the other non-traditional things in our family was that I worked nights and weekends in the early part of our marriage.
Mhm.
And there was the matter of who is the primary caregiver for our daughter when mom was working at night and weekends and holidays.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's emotional support too, because it means helping with homework, getting meals, taking to piano lessons or
Getting her up and
tutors.
getting her up to get dressed for church.
Yeah.
If that's important to you, and that's something else that should be discussed
Mhm.
early on too. Your beliefs. That's part of your emotional support. That
Yeah.
that you may not have noticed, for instance, but I turn to the church when I need something. I mean, that's a conversation that I think that young folks can bring up in their relationships, saying where they go for emotional support.
Right.
That's a good time for your husband, for you to find out that your husband says, I go to the bar for emotional support.
I know, right?
These are good conversations to have before you sign your name on the dotted line, before you say I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the third S is spending time apart. And I like to say for professional growth, perhaps there could be other reasons you spend time apart. So Tina, why don't you talk about that first?
Yeah, I got my PhD in this when my first novel came out in 1989, and in 1989, my husband fulfilled his lifetime dream of being accepted into the American Film Institute, AFI, which is one of the finest film consortiums in the world, and he was accepted at AFI in Hollywood, in California. And my book and my business was my home were going on in Georgia, on the other coast. And there was never any doubt. There was never any discussion about, how that he was not going to do this, because, I had a book coming out and I was busy and all the rest. It was like, oh gosh, more blessings until he left. It was all fun and games until he got on the plane and went away. And I was at home with a bad car and a new book and no money, no job, no outside job except freelancing. And it was one of the hardest times of my life. I did not.
Really?
I did not. Number one, I'd never lived alone by myself. I had gone from Spelman to living with my sister, and I were roommates, singles in Atlanta, but then to getting married and living with Shanae. And so, that had been that.
I never really thought about that you never lived alone. That's interesting.
Never lived alone. That's off the other night. This is the first time that I've ever lived alone.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like my mama. But it's it was jarring because I didn't realize all the things that he actually was doing for me, and I was going on book tour, which was something completely new to me, and I was going to have to be away from home. I was going to have to arrange for the cats. I was going to, I had all these existential, everybody loves that word. I had all these real jobs to do that Shanae used to take care of, because I was writing a book and, he was taking care of everything, to all of a sudden, boom, everything is on me. And so I was resentful and I was angry for a while. I was proud of him going, but then, having to do the real work made me sort of resentful and angry. And he wasn't on the phone. He wasn't as steamed about this whole thing as I was. He was fulfilling his dream in filmmaking. And so it took a while. It was difficult for me until I got the swing of it. And then what happened, Wanda, is that once I got the swing of it, he came back. and one of the things that he said to me, this is what's so funny, but when you were talking earlier about it's always, because you're an only child, it's always been, my. He finally, Janae said to me after he had been back about 2 months, he said, "What's with this my all of a sudden?" That's what we're talking about. He said, "What's with?"
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of military families.
My bill.
Huh? My what?
No, I was just saying my bills. Yeah, it was all that was me. I had slipped into it really easily.
Well, I was saying that reminds me of military families, because when soldiers are deployed, no matter whether it's the mother or the father, the wife or the husband, they're gone for a while, and all of a sudden you have to do everything, and it becomes my, because it is almost like you're not married. But what I remember about your period of separation, professional separation with Janae, is that he went for the first year and then he was accepted another year. How did you feel about that when he went again?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a real honor. I think that maybe they pick maybe 100 students, in directing, producing, DP, meaning the camera person, and they had other, but it's only like 5 areas, and you apply the first year. and people apply from all over the world, South America, Europe, everywhere, and they only accept like 100 students in the first year. The second year, you're invited back, and so out of the 100 students, maybe 20 students are invited back. So it's a real honor to be a second year student. Well, one to me, I was here 89, 90. I was just holding on. Shanae's going to come home. It's going to be good. All I got to do is just hold it together for, 6 more months. I got to hold it together for 3 more months. And at the end, we were almost coming to the end of the year. And Shanae calls me so excited. Okay, over the moon. Guess what, babe? I've been invited back for another year. And my reaction was like, duh, another year? We hardly didn't make it through this year. Do you not know how hard this has been? So, all of that came up. And so it took me a while to be proud and excited. I'll be honest, because I had so much other stuff going on. I had all this other anger, really, because I thought, well, gosh, he doesn't seem to know what's going on. All of those things. And I had trouble with friends. He didn't want to talk about it. And that's another thing, all these things that we're talking about, sometimes it's just going to have to be you, because many times your spouse, just doesn't want to do it. You can't make them talk about it at that particular time, but you can take care of yourself. I guess that's what we're trying to say. Take care of yourself and take care of your marriage.
I'm sure you learned a lot about yourself at that time too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah. So I had a professional separation, but I was the one leaving, and it wasn't nearly as long as what Janae did. I was just gone for, I think it was 8 weeks. So I had the opportunity to leave my husband and our daughter in the Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia, because I had a fellowship at Northwestern University, a program called the Management Training Center. And it was a program to teach newspaper professionals how to be top managers. They used to call it publisher's school. When you came out, you were probably on track to be a publisher. At the very least, for me, it was to be the top editor in newsrooms. And that's really what I wanted to do. So when I got the invitation from one of my bosses at USA Today that they wanted to send me to this program, I said, there's no way I can be gone for 8 weeks. I have a baby. She was 4 years old. And I thought, there's no way I can do this. And he had a brochure and he pushed it across the table. He said, well, why don't you just take the brochure home and read it tonight and think about it. So over dinner that night, I was talking to my husband and I said, guess what Ron wants me to do? Ron was my boss. Guess what Ron wants me to do? He wants me to go on this program. And I told him, he said, well, what did you say? I said, no, there's no way I can leave my family for 4 months. Before the night was over, my husband had cobbled together a support system with neighbors and family members to support what he could do, because he was working full time outside the home. And I was gone for 8 months. It was one of the hardest things to be separated from them, especially from a 4-year-old.
I was just thinking, oh man. But I also was thinking about Will and Lloyd combing that hair and getting dressed. And
we took care of the hair thing. Of course, braids helps with that. So we had someone do braids for a month, and then they took them out and did them again. So we did that. We had somebody come into the house in the summer part of my 8 weeks. A teenage girl from next door would come in every morning at 7 and, make sure she had breakfast and got her dressed for camp. A neighbor down the street had a son in the same summer camp as our daughter Shelby. And so she would pick her up and take her to camp. And my husband would go by.
Together,
we did. And then with the end of that 4-week period where the teenage girl had to go back to school in September, the neighbor on the other side was I don't know what you call your friend Janice, but she was a really wonderful white lady. The only thing she could not do is black women's hair. So of course we made sure the braids were back in, but she was able to prepare breakfast and send her off to school, to daycare. I guess it was daycare at that time. So we cobbled this wonderful system together so it works. And I guess the whole point of this spending time apart is you have to find a way to make it work. You don't just say to the other person, oh no, you can't do that. You can't leave me for a year. You can't leave me for 2 months or 3 months. You gotta,
That's out of the question.
yeah, you gotta be
that kind of, that's out of the question kind of thing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, the day that I returned from my fellowship, I was promoted, and then I was promoted again, and that never would have happened if I had not gone on this fellowship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you were having to tell me. I hope this part makes it into the show. But I was, as a matter of fact, it's Spelman, our alma mater, and I was promoting my book, Baby of the Family, my first book, and it come out in 19 in. Janae went to AFI in September of 1989, and Baby of the Family came out in November of 1989. And I'd never gone on book tour before. I didn't know all these things. So I was just talking to the scholars, who were teaching. I think it was at the Women's Resource Center at Spelman, and there was a scholar who shall be nameless, because people would be shocked if they knew. She told me this, and we were just talking. I said, "Well, gosh, I just don't know what I'm going to do." And she looked at me sincerely and said, "Well, girl, you're gonna have to get heavy into some phone sex." And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" It was like the last thing I expected to come out of her mouth. I mean, I'm blushing now, even thinking about it. In a million years, I never would have thought this woman would have said. And we went on to have a conversation. And me, well, won't I was so young. Won't the operators be listening? And she said, "Yeah, probably." I mean, it was just the most honest conversation about being apart. I thought that was
Okay. So as we end this session, I guess for those young people who just heard that part of what you just said, probably the most curious thing is, what's an operator? We won't go there.
Wonderful, Wanda.
As old chicks, we have lived long enough to know a lot of stuff, and many of our listeners tell us they love this segment. We call it Dropping Some Wisdom, and we certainly have a lot of it. So, Tina, what's your wisdom this time?
Well, I have some wisdom that I really find myself coming to a realization over and over again. It's one of those wisdoms that really gets deeper and deeper. At least it has for me. And my wisdom is, find your superpower and play it. Find your superpower and use it. One of the things that we've learned on this podcast, and just working with Wanda, my friend of more than 50 years, as you probably well know, is that we're really opposites, and in just so many ways. We're still finding out ways that that we're opposite. And one of the things that I discovered in working with Wanda, because we work so well together, is that she usually goes right and I go left. In everything, I'm Word and she's Google. She's gospel and I'm hip hop. But one of the things I discovered is that working with people, and this isn't just talking about working with a partner, but working with anybody at work, or working with anybody on a project at church, or even with your husband, even with your mate and your children, is you find your superpower, and your superpower is your strength. And whatever your strengths are. And, if you're working with somebody else, instead of butting heads, which is what Wanda and I would have been doing, because she wanted to go this way and I wanted to go that way, we decided to let each other go the way that we wanted to. And boom, this is Wanda going this way. This is me going this way. And boom, right in that X right there where we cross, that's our superpower. Our superpower is being able to create together without stepping on each other's toes, without running down each other's ideas just because we don't understand it. Wanda starts every conversation when I write something or I suggest something for one of the sections of our shows. Usually her first thing is, "I don't understand that." And so it's so interesting, because all I do then is explain my perspective, and she understands it. But we have different perspectives, so we often have to explain to each other what we really mean. But when we can do that, when we can explain to each other and then take a path together, that's our superpower. I love it. So
Okay.
I'm suggesting that people find their superpower. You know, you don't know what your superpower is until you get out and start mingling with people. And then finding out, she does that, but I like to do that. And that doesn't mean y'all can't work together. It just means you got to find your intersection. You got to find the superpower that works for you. So that's my wisdom for this time, Wanda. What about you?
Okay. Well, my wisdom this time is embrace your age. Tina, I think we briefly mentioned this in the first episode when you talked about why we decided to use Two Old Chicks as part of our podcast title. A
The
few
word
days,
old, yeah.
yeah, Two Old Chicks, because we talked about chicks and we had a lot of words, but I'm glad we settled on chicks. But you talked about the fact that we embrace that we're old. We really do. And so a few days ago, we got a reaction on Twitter from a fan who just finished listening to our first episode, and she heard us talk about that, how we embraced it. She wrote, this is what she wrote. She said, "I listened to your first podcast and I am hooked. The thoughts on being really old made me stop and reflect. Turned 60 earlier this month and really struggled with the thought of getting older and my own immortality. I just don't think we can say this enough. Embrace that age, baby. This is our time."
This is our time. We really thought, Wanda and I really thought that when we were in our 50s, that was like a gift given to us, because, most people were thinking, your 50s, you're winding down, you're getting toward retirement. And we were just catching our second wind. Just catching our second wind. And so, old means different things to different people, but we would like for it to mean something that is honored.
Yeah. At 60, I'll say this to the person who said, who tweeted this, you're just getting started. Like Tina said, 50, we thought that was where it was, but you're just getting started. We're at a time when we can say what we want to say, do what we want to say, go where we want to, whatever we want to do, we can just do it. We don't have to ask permission for what we want to wear or how we look or where we're going. And for many of us, there are no bosses. Wait, let me put it this way. We are our own bosses. We have a boss and it's us.
Yes.
As for mortality, let's just make an assumption that we'll live to be 100. And if that doesn't work out, then we got to have some fun that we can enjoy along the way, as long as life allows us to enjoy it.
That's wonderful.
Do not assume that life stops at 60 or 65 or in our 70s. Life doesn't necessarily stop. It just changes. Our strides may be slower, but our minds are still young. I wake up every morning feeling it like I'm in my 70s, which I'm not. But my mind says, nah, you're just 45, maybe 50. And that's what keeps me going. And then after I've taken about 5 steps and I do some stretches, I feel so much better. I feel so much younger. My family laughs at me when I mention that I'm retired because they know I'm not really retired. I may never fully retire. The only difference is that I'm working for myself now. And if I want to write, I write. If I want to edit, I edit. If I want to just spend the day on the pier at the beach, I'm there too. So my wisdom this time is if you're tired or old enough to be, if you're retired or old enough to be retired, it's up to you to figure out what you want to do next. I love the fact that my time is my own now. Each morning I give myself my own assignment for the day. And as James Brown put it, I feel good. Nana, 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 nana. I knew that I would. Embrace that age.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Well, that's it for this 8th episode of Two Old Chicks. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll tell others about our podcast. And please share this podcast with people in your circle.
That went quickly, huh, Wanda?
Mm-hmm.
That was a good episode. Yes, Wanda, you're right. Please tell others about Two Old Chicks. And one more thing. If you have an idea or a topic that you want us to discuss, or you have something that you want to give us feedback on, you want to tell us about, you want to share wisdom with us, reach out to us on social media. We're always happy to hear from you. So that's it for us. We'll see you soon. Be blessed. Take care.
Bye-bye, everybody. Love, love.
Love and peace.